Well, hello, folks. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower, and we've some changes on YouTube, so this might be a little bit of an awkward show here, but I wanted to get another one in. Very important information that we are discussing. So I won't be able to share my screen today. I'm actually going to have to learn how to do some audio, so we'll have to go to the GoPro that I bought and actually learn how to edit these things, and it's really going to be a bonus in the end, but today it may be a little bit ragged. Now, we've talked about on our last show regarding Jesus is the Antichrist and the Mandela effect, and Jesus is the Antichrist, and really talking about the resurrection hoax, the Mandela effect and the resurrection hoax, that we saw in John chapter 20 and verse number 9 that the apostles of Yeshua had no idea about the resurrection. And we also saw that they went and met Yeshua. They met the risen Jesus, not Yeshua. It's so easy to do. And people say, oh, well, what difference is it? Yeshua, Jesus, potato, potato. It's really a tremendously huge difference. And it's 2,000 years of conditioning that makes it very easy for us to slip back and forth. But the fact of the matter is that Yeshua was a real person. Jesus is a created person, and he is a placeholder for the Antichrist, as we're going to see. But we saw that in the last program, and you need to go all the way back to Antichrist. Jesus is the Antichrist, the Mandela effect videos to get to the bottom of this. I just can't give you the complete research every single show, but we saw that 60%, the original Greek language shows us that 60% of the apostles of Yeshua met, talked with, interacted the risen Jesus. 60% of the apostles of Yeshua met, talked with, and interacted with the risen Jesus and rejected him. Said, nope, that's not the guy. And we found out why they rejected him when we read in John chapter 20, verse 9, saying, we didn't know anything about a resurrection. 3.5 years or so with Yeshua every day, and they knew nothing about a resurrection. Now, of course, if they knew nothing about a resurrection, they would have known nothing about a crucifixion, known nothing about a death. How can that possibly be? Well, the plain, simple fact is that Yeshua never talked about a crucifixion. Yeshua never talked about a resurrection. And it was something that was invented, created, dreamt up after the time that Yeshua had already left Jerusalem. And folks, he did not die. He went to other places. I know you think it sounds crazy. I know you think it sounds nutty, but if you'll just stick with this long enough, you will see that it's true. And to some of you, it's a liberating truth. To some of you, you just want to call me names and do things like that. That's okay, because this probably isn't for you anyway. This is for folks that have eyes to see and ears to hear and want to know the truth so that they can, by that truth, be set free. But there's a big problem here, because John 20 verse 9 says, hey, we never knew anything about the resurrection. And you've got verses like Matthew chapter 16 verse 21 that says, from that time forth Jesus began to show his disciples how that he must go to Jerusalem, how he must suffer many things of the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and be raised again the third day. So how can John be right when he said that they didn't know anything about the resurrection? And how can Matthew be right? And there's actually several places in Matthew, and there's a passage that corresponds to it in Mark chapter 8 verse 31 and Luke chapter 9 verse 21 that shows this very same scene. So how can Matthew chapter 16, Mark 8, Luke 9 be the illimitable, inerrant word of God, and John 20 verses number 9 say that we didn't know anything about this? How can that be the word of God? Well, this is why I continue to harp forever and will continue to harp forever on the order of the New Testament books being jumbled. And this is part of the Mandela effect. The Mandela effect is coming to stop us from discovering things that I'm talking about with you tonight on the 14th of September in 2016. And on the 13th of October, I will be on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie, and we'll be talking about the Mandela effect. I think that's going to be more restricted to the Mandela effect, the Antichrist, and the prophet Daniel. But here's the key, and I'm trying to tell you this for 5 years, and I'll probably still be trying to tell some of you this 5 years from now. The book of Matthew was written about AD 47, okay? The book of John was written about AD 97. So John wrote 50 years after the book of Matthew was published. John's book, the book of John, chapter 20, verse number 9, was published. John was the last living apostle that had walked and talked with Yeshua. John had read Matthew chapter 16, verse 21. John had read where it was written that Jesus showed his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem, suffer many things the elders, chief priests, and scribes killed, be raised again the third day. John had read that. John had read the parallel passages in Mark 8. John had read the parallel passages in Luke 9. And yet, 50 years later, John sat down and wrote that we had never seen this writing. We had never understood this. We were never taught this. How much more plain can John make it to us bunch of knuckleheads? And we're really not knuckleheads. We're just, we are too trusting. We are too sheep-like for so many years, and we continue to a large degree to give the pastors and the popes and the priests and the ministers carte blanche and give them this trust that says, oh, they're telling us the truth, they mean the best, they're telling us things that are right, and we trust them, when that's simply not the case. The Bible has been hopelessly perverted. The Bible has been hopelessly jumbled, because if you had read it in order, you would have read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and then you'd have read John contradicting them. And you would have been forced to realize something's wrong. And what has actually happened is John's words are true, they're legitimate, they're real. And the words in Matthew 16, the words in Mark 8, the words in Luke 9 were added well after the death, probably, of all the translators. John died about 100 AD. So these words were added likely by Polycarp, or maybe someone even beyond. I would say Polycarp or his associates, because as far as I know, by the time Polycarp put together the New Testament and published it as a whole, and I know that that blows some of your minds as you think some august committee, some group of scholars, certainly hundreds of people getting together to decide what's going to be in the New Testament. No, it was one dude who did the deed. His name was Polycarp. Tell me that's not fishy. And when he did it, he's the one, or one of his associates, that must have added these other scriptures, because all we know is that the last words, the final message of the last apostle, tells us that they did not know anything about a resurrection, which obviously means they didn't know anything about a crucifixion. And the reason why they didn't know about it after walking with Yeshua for 3.5 years is he never talked about it. Folks, that is as simple and as plain and as true as it can be. The emergence of such truth is the reason why the Mandela effect is rising at this time, to keep us from understanding, to keep us from comprehending that we've been sold a bill of goods, and from learning finally, ultimately, that Jesus is the Antichrist. And we're going to get deeper into this tomorrow. We're going to show you when it was first spoken about, when it was first written. We're going to show you who started it. And we're going to really begin to see tomorrow the formation of Jesus as the Antichrist, and how the Mandela effect is hiding that. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian whistleblower, trying to bring you some truth so you can hear this truth and be set free. I'm wishing you peace. I'm wishing you light. I'm encouraging above all things to indoctrinate yourselves.